very much appreciate your presence because the topic that I will be presenting is really, really extremely boring. But it's fundamental and really essential in terms of making any conscious decisions regarding the projects that we work on or that we publish. This is something very crucial, but probably because it's so time-consuming and work-consuming and because it's so boring and because Excel is so much involved in this whole analysis, not many developers actually go through a proper Bizdev analysis. First question from me, does anyone actually know what Bizdev analysis might be? Right, so there are a couple of people. Let's see if my definition is similar to yours. Let's start with table of contents. First, a few words about me, not very important. Then description and purpose of Bizdev analysis. Then we're gonna see some 2023 stats from Steam. And those stats are really tragic from the point of view of us indie developers, I assume, because they show some really terrifying things that are happening on the biggest distribution platform. And these numbers are actually another reasons why Bizdev analysis is growing more and more important nowadays for all of us. Then we're going to start with the basics. We're going to go through a couple of first documents that you go through when you do Bizdev analysis. So we'll see and learn about competition analysis, P&L, and competition ref estimates, and move to the advanced, which are your game's ref estimates, competition price history, dev teams and budgets, and SWOT analysis as bonus. And then we'll finish with summary and references. So let's start. This is me. It's not very important. What matters is that I do Bizdev analysis professionally for around 10 years now. I started at Techland. I joined Techland in early 2016 to help launching Techland's international publishing. And I was a game scout and analyst at the international publishing branch at Techland. And then I was doing business representation and Bizdev analysis plus business intelligence for several game development studios here in Poland. I also worked with other studios as member of the supervisory board and basically as a consultant for several indie studios here in Poland who needed business representation, wanted to find a publisher or figure out some documents that are necessary for proper evaluation from the side of the publisher. So this is, Bizdev analysis is what I do professionally for 10 years, which might be probably the saddest fact from my life, but that's it, yeah. When it comes to the studio I represent, we are Robotoro Games. We're located in Warsaw, working on our first game that is called Havoc Dimension Break. It's a third-person single and multiplayer shooter with parkour flavor that hasn't been announced yet, so we'll see how it goes. And it's important to mention that Robotoro Games was founded by Roboto Global, and Roboto Global is a service provider that provides localization, QA, and VOs to industry giants for the last 23 years, which means that we have some funding, which is good. Right. Now let's go through Bizdev analysis, what, why, how. Now, Bizdev analysis in general is a set of documents that we do to try to position ourselves among our competition, and by using different methodologies, algorithms, and other methods, we are trying to estimate different business parameters, but also different estimates in terms of revenues and sales figures that we can expect of the game that is being analyzed. Such data-driven decisions going through this process will give us a lot of information that are mostly estimates, which is very important because even if you go through the best Bizdev analysis ever, it will never guarantee your commercial success, but at the same time, it will definitely increase your chances to be able to professionally evaluate whether your game has any chances for success at all on the market. And that's why this is so important. So Bizdev analysis contains several documents. I usually make 5 or 6 of them, but we'll go through every single one of them individually, basically. to give you those informations. That will give you sales estimates, ref estimates. You'll be able to do your own P&L, which means profit and loss. Profit and loss is a very important document that will give you at least one super crucial information, which is break-even. Break-even is the number of revenue, copies sold that you have to sell, or money that you have to earn to be able to recoup your investment into the development of your game, which means that you earned enough money to get to the 0 point, basically. So all the money you've invested in the development, in the production, in the marketing, if you self-publish, etc., now are back. So you'll be able to see how many copies or how much money you have to earn to be able to get to this point, which we call break-even. Now, I mentioned that there are some terrifying Steam stats coming from, well, 2023, happening in 2023. And, you know, we all know that on Steam, every single year, thousands of games appear, the competition is fierce. Well, comparing to, you know, App Store, for example, or Amazon, the competition on Steam is really small in general, right? Comparing to the numbers of games that launch every single year on mobile distribution platforms, or even, you know, different books on Amazon, basically. Steam is small in terms of numbers of games. But at the same time, the competition is huge. Now, in 2023, 14,531 games launched on Steam, which means that every single day, no matter if it's Christmas, Sunday, whatever, around 35 titles launched on Steam every single day. Now, obviously, we've heard maybe of, I don't know, 100, 200, 250, maybe, because they had proper marketing, because they had visibility. And Bizdev analysis is important also because it will show you, based on the data that you get from analyzing your competition, the games closest to you, how they performed. What are their weak spots? What are their strengths as well? What kind of mistakes we can avoid that those guys did to increase our chances to get this visibility? The problem is here. 9% of the revenue generated by 13,817 games. So out of 14,531 games that launched on Steam in 2023, 13,871 of them generated 9% of the revenue of all those games throughout the year, right? So it sucks, basically. And that's why this is not new in general. I mean, if you guys were into Steam reports, if you were analyzing how games perform on Steam, you could see, you know, some terrible, terrible data, even in 2017, right? So how much money an indie game earned on Steam in 2017 by default? Anyone knows? Well, less than $2, right? That was the stat. Now, we are gamers. I assume we are all gamers. We know about the industry. We work in the industry. We are interested about what is happening in the industry. We track, we add, we follow, we wishlist, etc., etc. But this is our bubble. We have to remember about that. Like the other data, even from 2017, but it's something that still stays in 2023. What was the number of games that people had in their Steam libraries? What was the most common number of games that people had in their libraries in 2023 on Steam? Do you know? Wanna try? Give me a number. 50? 100? It was 1. Like the most Steam users, and we know how many users Steam has, right? The most Steam users had 1 game in their library, and that was predominantly Dota, right? So that's the thing. So it's not something new that it's really hard on Steam for indie creators, right? But it never was so bad when it comes to this number, those proportions here. Usually, the Pareto ratio, if you know what it is, the Pareto ratio was something that was valid for Steam. Obviously, there were small, differences when it comes to the percentage proportions, right? But it was never that bad, never, than in 2023. Is it going to get better in 2024? I have no idea. I hope it will. Obviously, in the first half, we have several games that have achieved success that I think no one here thought they will achieve, basically. So in general, from global perspective, from global Steam perspective, the first half of 2023 is very successful, right? But will it be successful for us? Well, we'll see. Now, 8% of those games, so 1,162 games out of those 14,531, earned more than 250K, and that's gross dollars, right? It's bad. It's really bad. So yeah, so now I hope you do believe that Bizdev analysis is something that can at least maybe help all of us, increase our chances to earn a little more than, $1,000 or have more than, 2,000 wish lists. Because again, those are default numbers for indie games on Steam. Let's start with competition analysis because it's the first and probably the easiest document that we do when we go with Bizdev analysis. So, competition analysis is the document that lets you position your game, the game that you're working on, or the game that you want to publish, among its direct competitors. So, what do you have to do to make sure that you position your game right? You have to analyze at least 5 key Steam tags. So, you work on a game, you go through the list of Steam tags, so tags that Steam support, it's public, no problem. And you figure out up to 5 that describe your game the most. Then you go through Steam, you put those 5 tags in Steam, you filter the results, et voila, you have the list. So you have the list, awesome. This list can be, 2,200 titles long, right? So you have to go with more filters, of course. You have to pay attention to price tags. That is very important. Because if a game has similar price tag, or SRP as we call it, to your game, to your planned game, then you can assume that maybe the scope of the game is pretty similar to yours. That maybe you have a similar budget. Maybe you have a similar dev team in terms of numbers, in terms of positions, in terms of salaries of the members of your dev team, right? One of the biggest mistakes most indie developers do in their pitches is show references to their games they pitch that were the most successful. Like when I work on top-down hack-and-slash game, I show Diablo 4, right? And I tell people, okay, so this is a game that earned, I don't know, $65 million net, right? And because I do similar game, hey, there's a chance I'm gonna earn the same. No, you won't, basically, right? But because those documents are usually internal, we have to be, honest with ourselves, right? So let's add as many filters as possible to find the list of games that are really similar to what we are trying to do, right? So as I mentioned, pay attention to price tag, take brands and team sizes under consideration. Try to focus on the most contemporary games. Why? Because the market is changing, obviously, right? The behavioral patterns of players are changing. The purchasing processes, the purchasing decisions processes are changing. There are new platforms, new trends, new stuff coming out, etc., etc. So the more contemporary games we analyze, the better for the analysis. Then use Boxlater method to estimate sales based on Steam reviews for a start. I don't know if you guys are familiar with different methodologies that allow you to estimate sales results based on statistical data. Boxlater method is, the way I see it, the easiest one because it takes only 2 factors under consideration, really. One factor is the number of reviews of a game that is being analyzed. And this data is public. You can find it on every Steam page of every product. The second one is the most probable statistically multiplier that is being used to get the outcome, to get the final number. Now, where this statistical multiplier comes from, it's very easy to Google it, first and foremost. There are a plethora of websites that will give you the most statistically probable multipliers that you can use per year, right? VG Insights is the first choice, probably, I would go to. This is the easiest methodology because it uses only 2 factors. You know, there are methodologies that use like 43, but you won't be able rather to do this at home, right? Or at the office. I'm not able to do this in general. I'm trying, but it doesn't work very well. So Boxleiter method or Boxleiter ratio is the best for the start. Now, this multiplier comes from very different researches that was done by different people, basically. Those people, those analysts, asked a lot of development studios to give them real data when it comes to sales, when it comes to reviews. And based on those statistics, pops there's multiplier, right? Is it correct? No, it's not. But it's statistically the most probable. So you have the estimate. Now, when you do this for all the list of the games that are similar to your games after applying all the filters, you can apply average results and median results. And thanks to this, you'll be able to get estimated numbers of sales of games that are similar to yours. So this is the first and very important information that you're getting. Plus, you made yourself a beautiful Excel table. Awesome. Now P&L. So profit and loss, right? There are different P&Ls, basically. I think every single company has its own template, has its own way to create a P&L because different factors are taken under consideration, depending whether it's a small publisher, small developer, big publisher, big developer, etc., etc. But we already have some data, right? Now, based on the data we already have, we can, first and foremost, determine the right SRP of our game. This is very important because all the revenue estimates will start by multiplying your net SRP, so the price of the product that is seen on Steam page, basically. All of this analysis, all those numbers, all those estimates will start with this. So you'll be multiplying by net price of your game. So you have to determine it. Now you should know, after analyzing other titles that are similar, what are the most common prices of the games similar to yours, right? So it should be easier. Now, it's very important to remember that you do not multiply, you do not calculate with your gross price. You do not calculate with SRP. Because between the SRP, so the price that is seen on the Steam page, and the amount of money that you're actually getting is a huge difference. And this difference is, again, statistically calculated. It's usually between 51 and 57%. So you can even make a couple of variants, like the more positive variant, more negative variant, depending on what kind of percentage you apply. Where does it come from? Well, obviously, first of all, it's the store's margin, right? In terms of Steam, it's 30%. In terms of PlayStation's 30%, etc., etc., etc. Only Epic Games Store has 12, right? So potentially they are the most attractive in terms of their margin. But then you, of course, have taxes. And I could do a very long talk about taxes in game dev, basically. But you have to trust me because we don't have much time. So you have to trust me on this. It's between 51 and 57% of gross SRP. Now we are analyzing the development budget of our game. We're analyzing the marketing budget of our game. And boom! If you divide budget by net price, you have break even. So you have the number of copies of your game that you have to sell for this price, this net price, to be able to recoup your costs. Now you're clear. Every next copy you sell after this will be your income, right? So it's super important, because then we're going to be analyzing the performance of the other games, and we'll see, right? We already have the list of estimated sales of games similar to ours. So we can see if our break-even shows that we have to sell 120,000 copies, for example, and we can see even from the median, from those 10, 20, 30 games that we analyzed, that estimated sales of those games are, I don't know, less than 30,000, then we have a problem, right? Because something is wrong with our budget, because the chances that we have to achieve this break-even are statistically very small. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm saying that the chances are low. And the lower they are, the bigger risk you take. And the only question you have then, and the only answer you have to give yourself, are you ready to take this risk? If you are, that's fine. It's perfectly fine. But if you're not, you at least have some solid data to consider when making this decision, right? You're not acting intuitively, but you have some data. So we have the break-even, which is important. Now, from the competition analysis, we are able to determine estimated sales variance because we have average and median values. So we can create, like in the most basic way, we can create at least 3 sales variants, right? So the positive will be always based on average. The negative will be always based on median, right? Because it will be the lowest. And then you have something in the middle, something between median and average. And based on this, you can potentially estimate the number of the game that of the copies that you're able to sell here, right? So you can even compare different variants to see if you have any chances to achieve what others managed to achieve, or if you have to go wildly over this, then you at least know that, okay, it's going to be hard, right? Now, what also matters is that then statistical algorithms, and part of them are, again, public, coming from Steam directly. Based on all this data, you can determine the minimum numbers of reviews, wishlists, and followers you have to meet to achieve this break-even and start earning more, right? And again, it's easy to Google. Those numbers are available. You'll see what kind of algorithms there are to use in Excel file to be able to see those numbers. And again, you'll see that, for example, in order to achieve your break-even, you have to have 800,000 wish lists. Is it reasonable for you? Are you able to achieve that many wish lists? What's your strategy for that? What's your idea for that? Right? Maybe it's perfectly doable. I don't know. But this is something to think of. And now you have data. You have numbers that you can think of. You're not just sitting in a circle, look into your eyes and think, can we do this? Can we not? I don't know. Let's see. Let's see how market will react. You don't know that. You have to minimize, mitigate the risk as much as possible. Now, last but not least, please don't forget to check different ROI levels. This is especially important for indie developers. ROI. Do you know what ROI is? Return of investment, right? So you can create very easily, you can create a table using very simple formulas that will show you how much money would a publisher invest in your game that would be potentially interested, but taking under consideration the ROI that he wants to achieve, right? Because no publisher makes his business in a way that he wants only to recoup his investment. That wouldn't make sense, right? Publishers and investors invest money because they have exit strategies, and those exit strategies take under consideration the fact that they earn more than they put into their investment, right? And there are different levels of ROI per company. For example, when I was working at Techland years ago, our ROI was 400%. So with every euro invested in a game, we expected 4 to earn back, right? And I was doing this analysis 100 times for different games that Techland considered to publish. And if everything was fine in general, the numbers were fine and everything was beautiful and the game had quality and vertical slice was awesome, if in this analysis the game did not achieve ROI as high as 400%, that's it, right? We're not gonna publish this game. So that is very important. And you can simulate different ROI levels to see, right? How much money would a potential investor or publisher invest in your game if he's interested, but he has his own ROI at the back of his head, right? Now, competition ref estimates. So based on the data from competition analysis, we can estimate sales of our competition. Remember that we work all the time on the same table. So on the list of games that we've already chose, we've already picked, we've already filtered, that are the most similar to our games. Of course, we can use the Boxlater method or Boxlater ratio. Again, I think it's the best methodology for a start, just for a start. But then when you make more analysis, you'll find mistakes, you'll figure out maybe better solutions, better things, better methodologies, you'll change that. But for a start, Boxlater is probably the best. Now, you have to remember that pages like websites like SteamDB, they give you for free a lot of public information that are easily available to everyone and every time. And use SteamDB, determine Steam followers, all-time peaks, estimate wishlists. Estimate wishlists, this is important. Steam followers is public data. All-time peaks is public data. Wishlists, you can estimate by using the right algorithm to count, to multiply the number of followers by the right multiplier. Again, very easy to find online. Then we can, of course, count all the conversion rates, which are also extremely important because different conversion rates, out of which one is the most important? Well, obviously, the conversion from wish lists to sales, right? This is definitely the most important. So by using those multipliers, we can, again, see how our competition did, and you'll find some crazy results, really. You'll be able to see true unicorns through the layer of pure data, right? And this is really awesome because sometimes we just see a very successful game and we can see it's successful, but we don't know why, we don't know how it is successful. Well, we can only assume that it's successful because we do not know the real operational costs of the studio that is actually making and supporting the game, but we assume it's successful, right? That's why we have median, just to cut them off, right? Bastards. So they were successful, hopefully we can be too, right? Right. So then we measure average and median values, and then we can finally find out how realistic are our business goals compared to others' results, at least estimated. But it's still a number, and a pretty solid one, if we use the right algorithms, right multipliers, right methodology. Now it's time for some more advanced stuff, maybe. So let's start with our games ref estimate. Now, if you'd see how does it look in my case, how my Excel looks, you would probably leave the room because it's just too big, too complex, too large. It's very time-consuming, it's extremely boring, in general, making this, but I said this at the very beginning of my talk, so you're prepared, right? So unfortunately, to be able to see what's the progress, what are the KPIs that we need to achieve, what are the dynamics that we are looking for when it comes to getting to this magical break-even moment, right? We can now determine net price of our game per month, per platform, per SKU, in several variants, because we've already determined sales variance from competition analysis. So this is what we have to do. We take our game, like the base version of the game, let's call it SKU1. We have net price of our game because we know it's going to be between 51 and 57% of the SRP, and we can compare this to other game from our list, which means that we know whether we should be closer to 51 or closer to 57 in general. We take under consideration all the platforms that we want the game to launch on, and then we just go with table after table, column after column, month per month. We take under consideration everything. We take under consideration Steam seasonal sales, because those are the most natural moments when we can count for sales peaks, right? Of course. We take under consideration all DLCs that we want to implement as separate SKUs. And we take this under consideration on every single platform. That's why this Excel is so big. That's why it takes quite some time to be able to finish all this, but it's worth it. So, yeah, remember to consider Steam seasonal sales, of course. Don't forget one-time flat fees estimates, Humble Choice, Game Pass, PS Plus, etc., etc. This is something that is definitely worth considering, especially if we're thinking about working with a publisher as an indie developer, because the publishers by default use these flat fees, use this money to recoup faster. So usually if they pay for the development, they recoup 100% of their investment before we start earning money. This is by default, of course. This is their condition, usual condition by default. So if we're able to consider and act towards earning those flat fees, some of them can be very significant in terms of our budget, basically. So if we can pull it off, then they can recoup quite faster, or we can earn more if we self-publish, and this is always a significant amount of money that gets into our pocket. It's flat fee. I don't know what are the rates right now, but I don't know, a year, 2 years ago, I was able to take between $40,000 and $80,000 from Humble Choice, for example, for a game. When it comes to Game Pass, indie right now is between $50,000 to $100,000, probably something like that. So yeah, it's an important money to consider. Of course, we have to count in early access, in-app purchases, season pass, pre-orders, DLCs if we have them planned, because all of this matters. If you're working on a game on Unreal Engine, for example, you probably know that if you go over $1 million in revenue, right, per every transaction, Epic will take 5%. It matters. It's 5% less for you after. Of course, you can say, hey, I don't care. I mean, I have $1 million in revenue. I really don't care anymore, right? But it still matters. It matters for the analysis. It matters for the professional attitude. It matters for future projects. Everything matters in here, right? And we try to cover as big part of the game's life cycle as possible. You surely know that the game's life cycle on Steam and other platforms is, in general, longer and longer. It's because there is this market transition, very important right now. Gen Z and Gen Z plus players, so younger players, are coming on the stage. They dictate the trends. They come from mobile space very often. They never paid for a game. They expect a game with a lot of content thrown at them very often. They expect to have the ability to generate their own content, so UGC, user-generated content, right? They don't want to pay if they don't have to, but they want to have a lot of options to choose to pay, right? And this is how it changes. Like one small indie single-player game and premium business model for 4 hours of gameplay is not enough. It's gonna die with this new audience. And we have to consider this. This is something that Game Pass and Microsoft told us years ago. Guys, think about your post-launch support. Plan your post-launch support. Think about your monetization strategy, because it matters. And they showed us charts that people with post-launch strategy, post-launch support earn more. And that's true. That's true. It gives you more marketing beats also. It gives you more opportunities for greater visibility to prolong this life cycle of your game. Remember that right now we compete not for just money, we compete for time. We compete for Netflix time, we compete for Spotify time, we compete for every subscription-based service that is attractive to people who also like to play games. And that is why it's so important. We have to, and their attention span is getting shorter and shorter, right? That's why try to cover as big part of the game's life cycle as possible. Plan ahead. A plan is better than no plan. Even a bad plan maybe is better than no plan at all, because a bad plan can always be changed. But if you have no plan, then you just, under. Competition price history. Estimating your game's revenues is obviously easier said than done. Yes, that's true because it's a big document and you have to consider a lot of factors, as you could see. So what helps? Studying discount strategies of your direct competitors. Good thing is, this data is public. Again, you go to SteamDB, you go to a game, you go to its price history, you zoom out to see the whole history of the prices, and then you're able to generate a column in Excel. Again, Excel is my best friend, sorry about that. You put a column, you go through intervals. An interval might be seasonal sales, the time between seasonal sales. It can be a month, it can be a week, it can be everything that works in general. And you can see if you have those 10, 20, 30 games, and you do this for each one of them, you'll be able to see so many beautiful strategies, so many different approaches to the way the games are discounted, to the games that the price is changed for good and then changed for good again, for example, and then discounted. So you'll see all those strategies and you can learn a lot for free from the experience of people who are in the same position a couple of years ago or a couple of months ago, and they were going through the same processes and the same decisions with games that are really similar to yours, right? So it's really priceless. So, as a result, you're able to draw a graph of your direct competitors' discounts and compare them, as well as, again, determine average discounts, median discounts, right, etc., etc. You will see how truly valuable your net price is. You will be able to see what is the period of time I can count on that I will be selling my game for the net price. Statistically, again. But remember, your break-even is counted for this net price. So the more copies of your game you'll be able to sell for this particular price, the closer you get to break-even. If the game is discounted, if the price is lower, then with every copy you sell, you're closer, but just one smaller step, right? You could have done bigger step, but you have to do the small ones too, right? So it all matters. It all matters on the path to be able to earn money from your game by selling your game, and thus getting to the healthiest of all business models, to maintain sustainability, to be able to live from the revenues that you're earning from selling your game. This is something that is an achievement in itself. And you can, of course, estimate several variants of your own, right? Now, competition dev teams and budgets, probably most time-consuming part or document, as if the previous ones were not, right? So determining your competition based on tags and SRP is not enough. You have to make sure that you compare yourself to projects created by teams similar to yours and with comparable budgets. It doesn't matter if the game costs $29.99 and your game is gonna cost $29.99. Please check if this game by $29.99 is not just one of 4 projects made simultaneously by a team of 150 people that is part of, I don't know, Embracer if it was alive, right? For example. So yeah, so it matters. So you can go through databases like Mobigase.com and or press kits to gather data. It's pain in the ass. That's true. You have to go through this data. Sometimes you just have to watch credits in-game or on YouTube or anywhere that is possible. But this is what I do too, to make sure that those games are really well picked for the list. Because comparing yourself to data that don't matter is pointless, right? Treat your data well, and they will give you a great outcome, basically, in the analysis. So then we can estimate the dev budget based on the number of employees, their positions, and average salaries per country. This is, again, a lot of this data is public. Again, you can go through a lot of databases that will give you this information. This might be a little bit too much, I get it. But still, if you have the ability, if you have the capability, it's worth it. Now, SWOT is a bonus, as I mentioned. Are you guys familiar with SWOT analysis? You are. Okay, so we can skip this. No, of course, I have to say a few words about that. SWOT, as you know, is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths and weaknesses are internal. Opportunities and threats are external, so generated by the market that you're trying to position yourselves in. This is important. Sometimes we, as a development studio, not to mention the publisher, we're in this position that we have a couple of ideas that we maybe want to follow with in terms of our next game. And SWOT helps, after this whole analysis, SWOT helps probably to make this final decision. This is this final touch. When we just have the board and we compare several ideas together, we can see the bigger picture. And this is probably the last thing. Obviously, for publishers, SWOT is an everyday tool, basically, because they have always several titles to consider, to invest in, to support, etc., etc. So when I was a publisher, I was doing SWOT analysis, well, almost every day, to be completely honest. So just to sum up, essential for decision making, really, this analysis helps a lot. It's tough. It's time-consuming, it might be complex, it might be confusing. But if you learn it, if you do it, it obviously helps a lot. Data-driven methodology, combining several techniques and universal algorithms, and perfect for everyone in general. References, here's the list. If you'd like, of course, I can share links to every single one of them. You can always reach out to me and, of course, discuss with me. I know it's not easy, especially if you've never done this before. It might be a little bit too abstract. It might be a little bit too overwhelming. Of course, I get that. But honestly, I can help each and every one of you to go through this process. Even after signing NDA, I can share my own analysis that I do or I did. So you'll have at least a template that you can work with, for example. So that's not a problem. So thank you again to this small group of bold and brave people who survived this talk. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I wouldn't say it's such a small group, and you make sound business analysis as something easy, and we know it's not true. So are there any questions from the audience?
Thanks for the great talk. Not as boring as you said, really. So I have two questions. First is, a lot of this depends on one person data gathering and analysis, and how do you catch mistakes in your data pool? And the second one is, how do you compensate for all these tens of thousands of games coming out and constantly changing your data pool?
Right, so when it comes to the first question, I always try to give the analysis to somebody else, of course. I mean, I don't think we should, as creators of such complex analysis, you know, go through them for 1,000 times just looking for small mistakes. Usually, from experience, it's pretty easy to say that, you know, you can spend 2 or 3 weeks on an analysis like this, because this is how much time it usually takes me to do such a document, basically. And then you give it to somebody else who understands what you're trying to do here in Excel, for example, and 5 seconds after, he immediately points you to your mistakes. So I would say fresh eye of somebody else is definitely interesting. Now, when it comes to the waves of titles that are happening, well, unfortunately, fortunately for the analysis, but unfortunately for all of us, a majority of them are never really noticed, never really seen. They are never able to go through this wall, right? Because you have to have some kind of marketing money, marketing experience, some kind of know-how to just be able to generate, you know, I don't know, couple of hundreds or 1,000 followers at least. But for so many games, this is difficult. And I'm not saying this is because they are bad. It's because, well, some of them obviously are. They are terrible, right? But for those games that are really good, very often they're being created by, you know, one person, two people, three people, right? And those people, they are developers, they are artists, they are creators. They don't know anything about business, marketing, they don't want to know in general, because it's not their job. And I can perfectly understand that. So how do I take them under consideration? I look for trends. I try to anticipate trends. Of course, it almost never works, because our industry is beautiful, it's magical. It's so hard to predict, so hard to, you know, comprehend sometimes, right? I remember a series of articles about battle royales, right? And I remember one article on PC Gamer or IGN or something big in general that was titled something like, "We never saw this happening," right? We didn't know, we had no idea. And I think this is part of the beauty, but just to try to organize this whole chaos just a little bit, Bizdev analysis is the answer, really. I mean, you know, it's all about tags. It's all about a couple of numbers, really. So if there are new games that have the same 5 Steam tags that are really similar to yours in terms of how they look, how they work, how many people created them, what are the estimated budgets of those games, then sure, count them in. I mean, the rule of the thumb is that the bigger the list of games that you compare your game to, the better. Because obviously the data is, you know, there is more data, more numbers that you can analyze, so the results should be more detailed, right? So this is important.
Yeah, should be better. Thanks so much for the talk. Just a question. So, of course, it may sound like this magical number in terms of how much wish list should you have on Steam before launching. So, just bringing your personal experience, what would you say? Usually, it's, I would say, what I've seen, it's like 5,000 wish lists. If you have less, you shouldn't release. But what would you say in this perspective?
Just a number. I mean, every single number in an analysis without proper context doesn't matter. It really depends. I mean, what is your game? How much money you put into it? How many people work on it? What's your salaries, right? Et cetera, et cetera. What's your conversion rate? Your conversion rate might be very high. It can be more than 100%, basically, which means that you can sell potentially, and it's happening. You can sell more copies than the conversion rate from wish lists would be, right? Everything is possible. This is what this analysis is for, to exclude things that are least probable, let's call it like that. And unfortunately, if you do a lot of analysis like this, you can get depressed, basically, because statistically most of Steam games are not successful. It means that the results that you're getting from each and every analysis is rather poor, right? So if you go through this again and again and again, you can come to a conclusion that no matter what kind of game you're working on, it's gonna fail, it's probably true. That's it. No, sorry, of course. But, you know, statistically, it is how it is. I mean, we have to face it. I mean, we all dream of achieving a success. We all love the games that we make. Those are our children, right? We treat them like this. We love them. We nurture them. But the truth is that statistically, you're probably gonna fail, right? So we have to do everything in our power to minimize the chance of failure, right? 5,000 wish lists, statistically, from indie point of view, it's a good number, right? It's a very good number in general. I've seen people celebrating having 2,000 wish lists, right? But it's all about context. If you're a solo developer working on, you know, Construct, for example, Construct free, for example, for 3 months, and your goal is to just see how it works, right? How do I release game on Steam in 3 months, for example, right? And, you know, you didn't spend any money on it, really. You just figure out Construct on your own, right? Spend a couple of hours on the game. Well, more than a couple, of course, but you know what I mean. And then you go through the evaluation process. It's very quick. On Steam, you have your Steam page, you set it up, and then you sell and try to make some marketing in social media with your friends, stuff like this, on low budget, basically, or with no budget at all. And then you get to 2,000 wish lists. It's awesome, right? Like 2,000 people is wishlisting my game. This is amazing, right? But obviously for other companies, you know, 500,000 wish lists is a reason to kill the project, right? In the middle of development, right? So it always needs context.